Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Taking Up Space, a Michelle A. Mir podcast. Always excited about coming forward, you guys. Today's no different. Today, we're going to speak to, practices that were done by those that we honor in the Bible. Those powerful individuals that make up the content that's held within the pages of the Judeo-Christian Bible. The many aspects that these people utilized, the methods of operation that they all utilized in forming the house, the house that Christianity is branched out of, which is Judaism. And then it would snowball into Christianity. I'm speaking to divination practices, you guys. I want to speak to this because I believe that we are condemning things that many of the great ones, the Moseses, the Davids, the father of the whole Davidic line, the Solomons, and even Jesus himself utilized in navigating this physical world. There are many forms of divination. You have tarot readings, the tarot cards, that's a form of divination. You have the ephod, which was a method used in biblical times, using crystals and a breastplate to perform the divination practice. You had pendulums that people would swing. You could use a necklace, and if it swung in a particular direction, based upon the question that you ask, you have an answer. Many people in Middle Eastern cultures use these cups with the sand or coffee in it, and they use the formation of the coffee around the rim of the cup as a divination method. You could use, there's water methods of looking into water and seeing visions in water, mirrors. I mean, it's endless. There are so many methods that you can use to get a word. Divination is using a method, a physical method, to give you direction by calling on God, a God, demons, angels, whatever relationship you have with spirit, but calling upon the spirit realm to use a vessel to give you a word as direction in your life. And what brings this up is that someone came over yesterday, and I had this conversation with them about it, and they are a devout Christian. They are my go-to person, not my go-to person, but someone that I have in my close proximity that I can always rely on to share their perspectives on biblical topics with me. And they're a trusted advisor or trusted reference point that I have in my life. And we began talking about this yesterday, and it was perplexing. And this person somewhat agreed with me. This is a very devout person, old school Christian guy. And I want to share that conversation with you today because I think it's useful. Instead of us surrendering all of our power, I think it's very beneficial for us and necessary for us to look at things that are able to help navigate us through the sea of decisions that we need to make in life as it relates to our spiritual walk in alignment with God. When we look at biblical concepts, we can, or biblical walks of all the great ones written within the pages of the Bible. You see Moses coming forth and he having this interaction with God with this burning bush, and God speaking to Moses and directing Moses as to what to do when he goes back into Egypt. This was a monumental situation. This was not just an epiphany that Moses had and it was a one-off that he just, he felt like he got a word from God and now he's gung-ho and he's going to go and make it happen. No, this was a direct interaction that Moses profoundly had while in the wilderness from God, that he trusted so much that he went back to the place of his last defeat the place that he was hunted and had ran from, the seat of comfort that he knew all of his life, that he had to immediately abandon. And he would need to go back to that seat of comfort, which was no longer comfort. And now it was a risk he was taking to go back, because now he's wanted. The Pharaoh that was hunting him is no longer in power. It's a new Pharaoh. Yet this new Pharaoh is being advised by his old enemy, the priesthood. Same priests, new Pharaoh. And Moses trusts what he hears in the wilderness so much that he goes back to the place of his last defeat. He goes back to the lion's den, if you'd like to call it that. All off a epiphany, a interaction that he had in spirit. God using a bush as the vessel to communicate his word to Moses, his word of direction to Moses. We see David, the root of the Davidic line in the Bible, the one man God blessed enormously. God had not blessed anyone the way he blessed David. This same man would be the root of which the Messiah would come. The Messiah that would create a whole nother religion, Judaism is the mother of Christianity. Christianity would be birthed out of Judaism by way of Jesus. And David would be the father, the forefather, the one individual that would bring all of this about. Yet when David was hunted by Saul and he was off in what he would consider his wilderness, on the run from Saul, David would not have any interactions with God face to face. David would not have a prophet amongst him. He would not have a Nathan show up until after he overcame the Saul of his life. Yet while he was wrestling with Saul, David would use and lean on profoundly divination methods. Whenever we see David in a pivotal place where David does not know where to go, and he needs an immediate word, what does David do? David every time defaults over to using a divination method. And that method each time would be the ephod. Saul himself would default to a divination method by way of the witch of Endor. Why didn't Saul default to the ephod? Well, I'm sure he did, but God was not answering. God had gone silent to Saul. And because Saul was in a situation where he needed an immediate word and God went silent, Saul defaulted over to something outside of God. He went to a witch to bridge the gap between the physical world and the spiritual world, to wake up Samuel. And this was Saul's mistake, one of many. And this is the portion of things that I want to bring to light. The divination methods are not wicked. And I'm not here to support divination, but I am here to support the truth. So whenever I see things being cast into the light of untruth, I must shine the light on the truth, because this is the enemy's tactic. The enemy's tactic is to consistently put the truth in the wrong light. He's an expert at it. Whether it's the truth of people, whether it's the truth of God's word, whether it's the truth of the angelic realm, or anything having to do in supporting the people and leading them to their true purpose, he always looks to cast it in the wrong light to mislead the children. And I am seeing this happening with the divination methods. Israel used multiple divination methods, friend. We see this with Moses, which is the forefather. We see this with David, which is the forefather, the two main forefathers. I'm going to even throw in Abraham, because Abram was a master astronomer. You can forecast out the way that things will turn out by mapping those stars, friend, which is a form of divination. All of these things are deeply divinational. And all of these people are Israel's greatest forefathers. They are Israel's pillars. They're not just runners that ran the play. These are the foundation setters of the entire house of Israel. And they all use divination methods, all of them. And the method in which they used was through God. And that is the part of the conversation that I want you to remember the most, is that it's not what you do, friend, in form of divination. It's how you do it. Because the primary example is that in order for God to work through you, friend, you must be aligned. You must live a certain way. You must not just live a certain way. You must have a certain characteristic. You must be dedicated to your walk with God. It must be paramount in your life. Not just what you say and what you show, but it must be consistent within your activity. God is not, you can't manipulate the system. You'll only manipulate yourself. It'll show in your alignment to God. It'll show in your covering of God, your consistency and your devotion. And all three of these people that I named were immensely devoted and consistent to their honor and their veneration to the God of Israel. And it showed in their lives. They managed themselves appropriately. When David was on the run from Saul, David could have attacked Saul several times and fallen out of alignment with God. It would have solved his immediate problem, but it would have led him to a larger problem. And that larger problem was misalignment with God. David falling out of alignment with God and harming Saul would have exempted him from God's covering. And now he's just like the Sauls of the world, wandering and going from one lower God to the next, looking for some comfort and covering. This is the distinguishing factor. David comes forth each time he's at a crossroads and he knows he needs an immediate word. And instead of depending on his emotions and his intellect, he depends on the ephod. What is the ephod? The ephod was a breastplate and it had 12 stones. Each stone was different, and each stone was representative of each of the 12 tribes. They're crystals. The ephod was made up of 12 crystals, all independent of one another, but that worked in harmony with one another. And they were all distinctive of the 12 tribes. Now, it wasn't like we do today when we see people with these crystals and we say, oh, you're worshiping those crystals. These things were looked upon. If you were to say such things in the times of David and Moses and Abraham, you would have been looked on as ignorant, because that's exactly what it is. It's ignorance. When you speak such things, you're showing your level of ignorance. You're just following the crowd and what the crowd says these things represent, not knowing the truth of the foundation of your house. These crystals, why would God choose crystals to signify the 12 tribes? Well, these crystals that are chosen for the 12 tribes have certain attributes to them. They attribute themselves to certain solar cycles. They attribute themselves to certain stars. They attribute themselves to certain processions of planets. Certain months of the year. And that's why they were each distinctive to each particular tribe. So that when God gave a word through the ephod, he could distinguish between the tribes, and he could use the crystals to speak a particular truth, because each crystal held a particular essence. It's a science that you must understand to be able to read what God is saying. And this is why I've said so many times, God does not respect ignorance, friend. God expects you to know. Why? Because God has laid everything out for you to figure out. Sure, it's going to take time for you to learn it. Sure, it takes dedication to know it. It's all God's system. And God has put you here so that you know him, so that you look into these things and learn them. And in learning about them, you show reverence to them, not worshiping them. You show reverence to them because you understand exactly what position they play in the big scheme of things. And the big scheme of things is you learning the various aspects of God. They're all tools. They're not things to be worshiped. That's ignorance. It's ignorant to worship such things. It shows the lack of knowledge that you have. It's just like saying that you enjoy reading. You enjoy reading books. And then you have a whole library of books that you read, and you read all the time about various things. It's just like you love to read certain types of books, or you just love reading in general. And then someone comes in and they condemn you for reading. They don't read because they were brought up in a household that says reading is wicked. You're not supposed to read. God gave you a mind, a brilliant mind, but God doesn't want you to use that mind to read. And they have nothing really to base it on. Yet in order to understand God's word, or the history of God's people, or the history of people that God has led and worked through, you must read. And all of those people that you align to and that you have built your religious faith around, your spiritual foundation upon, all of them read as well. But you teach your children that reading is wicked. It's the same analogy. It's the same thing with these crystals and with the divination practices. And again, I must say that I'm not here to try to convince you of divination and to accept divination. This is not the channel of me convincing anyone. I am offering you a perspective for you to ponder in case you have not already. So we know that David, in all of his walks, whenever he was in a crossroads, outside of the time when he came upon Ahimelech and he was offered, he didn't even ask for the ephod. He told Ahimelech, do you have a sword or anything that I can use? Because I ran from, I had to run really quickly and I left my sword. And Ahimelech says, well, I don't have anything outside of Goliath's sword, which is wrapped behind the ephod. And David, that's the only time David was in a really dire situation and he did not utilize the ephod. And I'm willing to say David didn't utilize the ephod at that time because David was on the run. He knew where he needed to go. He didn't really need direction at that time. He needed protection. So he chose Goliath's sword. But every instance after that, when David had finally gotten the understanding of what he's dealing with, every instance after that, David used the ephod as a method of divination to direct him in overcoming his situation with Saul. Had David not had the ephod, it's fair to say that David would not have been as successful as David was in him navigating the waters that he had to swim through in dealing with Saul. And the only reason why David was not condemned by God in aligning to the ephod, utilizing it, and calling upon the Spirit of God to direct him as to his next steps was because he was calling upon God for direction. This is the key. So, in God condemning those that utilize divination, his condemnation has nothing to do with divination. His condemnation has everything to do with what spirit you're calling to give you the answers. When we see Saul going to the witch of Endor, he's not calling upon God to give him the answers. He's calling upon the witch of Endor. And this is what made Saul guilty. Yet David is calling upon God several times in the Bible by use of this ephod, and he's never been condemned. This is the key that I want everybody to understand. Many people say, oh, these sorcerers and all these sorcerers, God is going to condemn these sorcerers. But when we look at Genesis and we look at Moses coming through, the forefather of the house becoming a nation, and the one spearheading their migration out of Egypt, when he comes back to Egypt, upon getting a word from God, he goes back to Egypt. He's facing a new Pharaoh, but he's facing the old enemies of his past, the priesthood. But Balaam and his sons, the Balaam that would curse the children, that the Midianites would hire to curse the children. Several chapters after, Moses would go and face in Egypt. These are the people that Moses is fighting in Egypt. Balaam and his sons. And he goes to these people. And what did they do? They have a spiritual war. What you're seeing when Moses throws the rod down and then made Balaam and they eat the rod and the locusts and all of that is spiritual war. That is not just something that, nobody was doing. There were people at that time that could control the winds, people that can bring a storm, people that could stop a storm, people that could call on the aspects of nature to attack communities by way of insects. And you're seeing it play out in the pages of the Bible. One would consider Moses a sorcerer of sorts, someone that could call upon the power of God to create immense change in the world. Yet what distinguished Moses and what gave him the ability to do it without being condemned was the God he was calling on. So I wanted to add this to my repertoire of podcasts because I think it's very vital we all begin to pay attention to things. We like to categorize things as all bunch stuff all together. And I don't believe that is the method of operation that God intended. There are many spirits in this world vying for attention, friend. Many. And this is why it got so convoluted. This is why God brought everything back to one. It gotten so convoluted that you had lower gods proclaiming themselves as the creator. And you still have that going on today. And God said, I need to bring this back to the basics. We're going to start it all again with one God. And I'm going to allow you to search this one God so thoroughly. You know, like we go through this Bible and we search this Bible. And because this Bible is really just, how many pages is it? It is 1,918 pages, this particular Bible. Yeah, we search this Bible and we find a multitude of truths in it. So much so that you can look on any social platform and you can find people talking about various things having to do with the same book, the same one book, most often. And God is saying, I need you to search me through your activities in life the same way. I need you to search me in all of your walks. Don't just rely on this book. This book is a testimony of what I've done in the world. Rules and things that I have given you to align to help you search me better so that I can move more abundantly in your life. But I'm bigger than this book. What you think you know of me is an itsy bitsy dot in an ocean. And that ocean is me. Whatever ideology you have of me, bound within the pages of this Bible, is a small aspect of me that you have broken down into pieces. And I understand it is your love for me that makes you feel as if you've got to do it exactly how somebody else says you've got to do it. But I'm here to tell you that you learn more of me by leaning in on the word surely, but really by going about life and searching for me in all of your actions, looking for me, and allowing me to resonate within you. I will show you who I am. So that you don't get in a place where you are afraid of the boogeyman. God tells these children every step of the way in this Bible, do not fear. There is no fear when you align properly. There's only wonder and fascination. There may be some fear when you're treading on new land, new ground, and you don't know the environments you're being led in, but that all should be initial. It is your job to lean in on the Spirit of God and your knowing of God and wrestle with that fear. Because it is written everywhere in this Bible to do not fear and to be courageous. So it is your job to wrestle with the fear, not allow it to overtake you. Your knowing of God should allow you to overtake it and to be able to use the tools that God has given you at your disposal. God said, everything of this world I have given you. Use it. But be wise. Don't seek it through your own counsel. Cross-reference it with what is within you. Does it feel right? Is it in alignment with what you know? Have you prayed about it? Meditated on it? Because all the answers spring forth from inside of you. Just word for you guys today. I don't want to make this into a Bible study, but I do want you to understand that Everybody is not the boogeyman. And a lot of the things that we condemn, we see happening right smack dab in the pages of this Bible. I'm talking about paramount things. Things that we don't see nowadays. We don't even see mortal men moving in this way. You don't see it. But God moves, friend. God will move in a way that, I'm telling you, if God were to move through people nowadays, I'm noticing this. It's so foreign to people, the way that God moves or has moved within the pages of this book, that if God were to move through those ways today with mortal people, you would think those people were demons or something. You would say, oh, they must be demons. Oh, it must be a demon possessing them and doing all these things. No, it's not a demon. I'm sure that there are people in your lives that you have seen, not all of you, but some of you, that God is moving tremendously through, right in front of you, giving you a front row seat to it. And you will condemn them people and call God a demon, God's movement, because of your ignorance to the way that God moves. It's a trick of the enemy. And also it's just lack of knowledge amongst certain people. I'm asking that you search your spiritual books and you see the way that God has moved for the people within these books. Not make them fantasy and adding your ideology to them, but looking at it as if you were there. I saw something yesterday on social media where a person was saying you can't look at scripture in a way, as if you were there. You can't do that because it convolutes the message. And I thought that is not true. Absolutely not. The power in this book is when you put yourself there. When you look for all the information, not just within the Bible, your apocryphal texts, the Torah, the Midrash, or whatever other reference points you have. You look for the truth of this everywhere you can find it. And you pull them all together. And you begin to use the God within you to cross-reference them to find the truth. And in doing so, you must at times, all the time, put yourself in those places. Read it and try to internalize it in a worldly way, because that's the only way you're going to get to it. Without doing it that way, it's all fantasy. It's all some sort of science fiction novel that you can't really relate to. You relate to it because you can see it as reality, because it is. If you don't do it that way, then it's not reality. It's all hypothetical. It's all a fantasy. This is a story of a people. Whether it's the children of Israel, or whether it's a people, a particular nation that these children are interacting with within whatever book or page within this book you're on. It's a story of a people. And it's a story of God. And it's a story of God moving amongst all of them. You love more than you'll ever know. Never stop telling you. My podcast episode for the day. Have a blessed day. Peace and love.